Hello, I'm Giancarlo Guizzardi, and today I'm presenting this paper entitled A Core Ontology of Economic Exchange, which is a collaboration with Daniele Porello from the Italian National Research Council and Tiago Salles and Glenda Amaral from the Free University of Bolzano. I'm also affiliated to the University of Bolzano and the University of Twente in the Netherlands. In areas such as service management, accounting information systems, and financial reporting, there is a growing interest in using well-founded conceptual models to create information systems. A central notion there is this notion of economic transaction or economic exchange. This is a central notion also in important frameworks in these areas, such as the ISO Standard Resource Events Agents, REA, the UFOS Core Ontology of Service, OMG's Financial Industry Business Ontology. What we propose here is a well-founded reference model that is a core ontology, clarifying this notion of economic exchange and capturing this in an explicit, precise, reusable, and extensible conceptual model that can be used by conceptual modelers and information systems engineers. We do that by basing our work on the Foundation Ontology UFO, the Unified Foundation Ontology, and with the modeling support of the OntoUML language, a conceptual modeling language which is based on UFO. But we also ground our work on the action theory of economic exchange, 8, which is a modern theory in philosophy of economics proposed by the philosophers Olivier Masson and Emma Tiefenbach. What's special about 8 is that it addresses a number of problems with the standard view on economic exchange, and it's general enough to account for both exchange of goods, resources, and services. Intuitively, an economic exchange goes like this. Suppose Mary comes to John and says, "Do you want my guitar in exchange for your bike?" Suppose John accepts such a proposal. This creates mutual commitments in John and Mary, and then in order to honor these commitments, we'll have the actions of Mary transferring her guitar to John and John transferring his bike to Mary. Why does that happen? According to the standard view, economic exchange can be explained in terms of preferences of agents A and B with respect to resources X and Y that they control or own. So this inverse preference will lead to voluntary mutual transfers of these resources, which are, again, partially founded on these preferences. However, suppose we have a situation like this. Mary comes to John and says, "If you teach me how to play the piano, I'll teach you how to play the guitar." The standard view would have trouble explaining such a transaction because the standard view is based on resource transfers. And here, teaching how to play the piano and teaching how to play the guitar are actions, ultimately events, which are non-transferable. So what 8 does is to explain these transactions in terms of preference over situations in which agents perform certain actions, beliefs about what would take an agent to persuade the other agent to bring about those situations performing those actions, process of offerings and acceptances, creations of commitments, and ultimately the performance of certain actions that will honor those commitments. Masson and Tiefenbach propose this theory in a precise but textual form. So what we do in this paper is to propose an artifact, a conceptual model that captures the concepts comprising this theory, and again, in a way that's reusable and in a language that has a formal semantics, so providing an initial axiomatization for this theory. And our model reuse a number of micro-theories based on UFO, dealing, for example, with agents, actions, economic preference, commitments, and beliefs. And in particular, one central theory there is a theory dealing with relators and events. So relators are these existentially dependent objects, which are bundles of relational properties and which bind certain objects thus explaining why certain relationships hold between these objects. So, for example, if John is married to Mary, this relation is grounded on the existence of a particular relator, the marriage, a kind of contract, a bundle of mutual commitments and claims between John and Mary. So this is one pattern, relators binding entities and being composed of relational properties inhering in these entities. And another pattern is one connecting relators to events. So events are basically manifestations of these relators being manifestations of these relational properties constituting these relators. So for example, the process, which is the marriage between John and Mary, is an aggregation of actions that John and Mary perform to honor the commitments and claims that constitute their marriage as a relator. These two patterns, one connecting relators to the relational properties constituting them, and the other connecting the relators and these constituting relational properties to events, which are their manifestations, appear in many parts of our ontology of economic exchange. For example, here, preference is an example of such a relational property, connecting an agent to a value experience. For example, one which includes the performance, the occurrence of such an economic exchange. Preference will lead to the execution of an event, which the offer, which is an event made by an offerer towards an offeree. This event will create a relator with an economic offering, with a relator composed of commitments and claims, conditional commitments and claims, connecting offerer and offeree. The acceptance of such an economic offering is another event, which in turn will create another relator with an economic agreement, which is again composed by specific, now more specific commitments and claims inhering in these two parties. Finally, an economic exchange is a complex event involving these parties, and it's an aggregation of actions performed by these parties to honor the commitments which constitute the economic agreement that binds them. As practical implications, in the paper we elaborate on how this core ontology of economic exchange can be seen as a generalization of both the REA standard and the UFOS core ontology of service, which is itself an ontology which has been shown to be able to harmonize different views on service in the literature. And as next steps, we want to connect this ontology also to the financial industry business ontology, enhancing the notion of economic exchange in FIBO. We want to connect it with an ontology of legal relations that we published at ER 2 years ago, and which would allow us to have a richer view on these relators in the economic realm. And we also want to connect this work with a number of other ontologies dealing with different types of economic phenomena, such, for example, service, contracts, trust, value, risk, and money, which we have published in companion publications, and which form an ontology network for economics, which can serve as a foundation for information systems engineering, in which economic notions play a central role. Thank you very much for your attention.